All right. John and Matt Phillips here for the Music Business Club Happy Hour. Thanks for being here, guys. Cheers.
Thanks for having us, Reed. Cheers, man.
Yeah, good to see you. So, I have a feeling everybody watching totally knows who you are. But just a little pregame here for everybody. John and Matt Phillips have been in the music industry for a long time and have been leaders in the world of American reggae music. From signing Sublime to managing Slightly Stoopid, producing massive tours, producing small tours, destination festivals, and everything in between. So we are going to just get into your story. We'll be taking questions from people in the live comments section. There were some questions that people added on Facebook and stuff already, so we'll be getting to those as we go too. But I'm thinking, why don't we just go all the way back to the beginning and start with, what were your first jobs in the music business? John, if I'm not mistaken, you got into it a little bit before Matt. Do you want to give us the opening sequence here of how you really got into it?
Yeah, I mean, my first job, I can't really say it was a job because I didn't get paid. But when I moved to Los Angeles to pursue my interest in the music business, I did start booking gigs on UCLA's campus with the campus current Cultural Affairs Commission. And that was really the first interaction I had, like in a real music industry sense, booking shows, for a large audience. And then from there, I started working for a record label called Gasoline Alley that Matt and I were, born into a music business pedigree in a sense. Our uncle, Randy Phillips, who gave me my first opportunity at the label Gasoline Alley, he was a partner in that. And I just, interested in the business my whole life, loved music, was exposed to it early. So I started interning for Gasoline Alley while I was in college and got my start kind of honing my skills early in those two, situations.
Yeah. So first booking shows at UCLA for the student organization.
Yeah, they did free shows at noon in the Bruin Walk. So the first show that I booked there was Mike Watt from the Minutemen and his band Firehose. I think it was my sophomore year at UCLA. I was a transfer, so it was around 1990, late 91 or 92.
Okay, cool. And so Matt, obviously you guys kind of came from a family where the music business was already there. What was your first step into it for real?
I mean, my first step into it for real, again, wasn't really a job. This is probably fast forward a few years after what John was talking about. We had, I was living in San Diego going to college, and, we were kind of already entrenched in the Sublime and Skunk record scene. And John was always telling me, like, oh, you got to link up with Miles and Kyle from Stoopid. If you're moving down to San Diego, they're like, the coolest cats. You got to link up with them. And, I definitely knew those guys and was friends with them and was going to a lot of Slightly Stoopid shows locally. But my first real, I guess, gig, and again, it wasn't a job, but Michael Happelt from Skunk Records, he came over to my college apartment one day and we were just, talking. He's like, man, like, I'm going on tour with the Long Beach Dub All-Stars. Skunk Records just released this, the Slightly Stoopid's Longest Barrel Ride album. He's like, why don't you take 1,000 of them and go, back then it was record stores we had to sell music through. There was no iTunes or Napster or anything. He's like, why don't you go store to store and sell them and give me $4 and split the rest with the guys, or figure out with them how you guys want to split it. So he just he had this big white truck and he pulled up to my college apartment and just started loading boxes of CDs into my college apartment. And I kind of just hit the road up and down the coast, walking into Tower Records, Warehouse Records, mom and pop shops,
slanging,
trying to beg people to take on the Longest Barrel Ride. And obviously the indie stores were all stoked on it because they'd known about Skunk Records and Sublime and the affiliation, and some of them were already fans of Slightly Stoopid. And then you know, a lot of like Tower Records and Warehouse Records, they'd take some on consignment. And, you know, I just kind of, that was really my job then, is just driving up and down. I don't know if I made any money, but that was kind of how I got first started.
Yeah. And like the itch, you got the itch, you got a little taste of it, and it was exciting, and you just kept going. Yeah.
It was honestly probably the most fun part of the music. I mean, those days, because it wasn't even about like being in the music business. It wasn't about like, I was a fan of Slightly Stoopid. Like I loved them probably the most. They were young. They were like young kids, and I was really a fan. And when Miguel had asked me to do that, I was like, cool, this is gonna be fun, you know. And we'd just go around like handing out stickers, and you know, it wasn't till later that Kyle and Miles had asked me to manage them, but that was kind of the first start. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's go back, because you touched on this, but there's obviously a huge story to be told about Sublime. You know, signing Sublime. Can you share us? You know, just share the story with us.
Yeah, well, as I was saying, out of college, I started working for a record label called Gasoline Alley Music, and Gasoline Alley was a partnership with MCA Records, which is Universal. So they had some big budgets and some, you know, pursuits in the R&B hip hop world that were going pretty well, and they were actually pursuing some rock and roll bands that were local from LA. And at that stage of the music business, I mean, you were putting huge money like into videos, and you know, it was like Matt said, you were selling actually hard CDs still. There was no digital yet, and I was a young cat at the label and was kind of on the street level. And luckily enough, I met another cat like me at the label. His name was Greg Abramson, Ruby Greg, and Greg was helping. He was interning at the label in the promotion department, but a lot of the time he was in the office, and he was cutting out Sublime cassette labels and stuffing them and sending them out to industry people. And I was kind of curious, you know, like, what Sublime, what's that? And he gave me "Ja Won't Pay the Bills" and the purple and the green cassette tapes. And he's like, this is a band Sublime from Long Beach that I'm working with, helping out, and you should come check them out. You like them? He gave me the tape, and I know, just put that tape in. I had a Ford pickup truck with a really nice stereo system, just out of college, and I put in 40 Ounce to Freedom and heard Don't Push and Bad Fish, and you know, like some music that I'd never heard before, not to mention a cover of Bob Marley, a cover of the Grateful Dead, a cover of the Descendants. All the music that kind of shaped my DNA growing up was all there. Hip hop, the Beastie Boys, and I just fell in love with what I heard from that. You know, I just felt the vibe, and I felt compelled to kind of make Sublime my first crusade in the music business, in terms of something that I really believed in, the music and the energy and the soul of something that I knew had the ability to probably affect a lot of people if it was heard by a lot of people. And luckily I was in a position at that point to kind of try to do something about it. Very young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you know, I don't know yet if I had heard the Hunter S. Thompson quote about the music business.
Right. Well, I mean, you gotta kind of live it before that quote really makes sense.
Before it rings really true, you know.
Yeah. So what year was that? You discovered the cassette tapes, and then the self-titled album that came out in '96, wasn't it?
Yeah. I really got to know Sublime first in 1993. I think I heard their music late '92. 40 Ounces of Freedom had dropped in '92. Although the band had been doing their thing locally down in Long Beach, backyard parties, the Nugget at Long Beach. And I wasn't really a part of that, you know. Ruby Greg and then Apple after that, once I met him, they really pulled me in. And a guy named Zach Fischel, who was at the label too at the time, he really loved Sublime as well. It just, all of us kind of like, you know, we knew there was something special happening, and we kind of just try to all pitch in and do what we could to spread the word about the band. And like Matt said, whether that was driving records to stores or, you know, hanging posters or calling up people at the record store, the radio station, we were doing, you know, a grassroots style at first. And that was 93. By 94, Gasoline Alley had offered a contract, an official contract to the band, and they signed a Gasoline Alley / MCA Records Universal in 1994, the summer of 94.
And was the self-titled album the only album to come out on that particular imprint?
Well, that was the only album that while Bradley was still alive.
Right. I couldn't remember if there were like singles that came out along the way, like developing the story of that album, or if it was
really what happened is Skunk Records was this cool thing. It was a logo. It was Miguel and Brad, Sporto, Groovy, you know, these Long Beach characters who were kind of like punk rock, DIY, you know, the real guys doing this stuff. And, you know, like that appealed to me as something that had a intrinsic quality, you know, like a manufacturer, it was real. And what my vision for it, in a sense, kind of recognizing that and knowing that I was in this big corporate conglomerate, really, once you got outside the smaller label, Gasoline Alley, I was hooked to. I don't want Sublime to get lost. You know, once I convinced the suits or the execs to sign the band and put some money out, I was afraid that, like, they could get lost. And, of course, there were other issues going on at the time, too, like that weren't really making Sublime a favorable possibility, you know, like, but we started to market those records as Skunk Records. We kind of turned this little team of people that were inside the label, from like interns to, you know, all of us and people that came aboard. We literally kind of took over these offices in Beverly Hills, and we kind of started helping Miguel like make Skunk Records bigger. We actually got the distribution from Alliance early before we put the records out for Universal, and our goal was to build this independent band, that independent retail, that college radio, which kind of paid attention, kind of didn't, but we just wanted to build it from the bottom up and create an infrastructure that, you know, enabled the band to be perceived as something real before they got into that like more corporate system and made the big record.
Yeah. So how were you able to get a distribution deal with Alliance? Was there just enough of a groundswell in the Southern California scene that like people who were paying attention knew, or was it a hard sell?
This was the smartest thing that the suits, including my uncle at Gasoline Alley, did. They listened to us. Like when we said, hey, don't touch this, you don't really get it. They helped us get the deal with Alliance. They actually understood that, and they said, no MCA, do it the way you guys are doing it, and, you know, let us just help you. So we had some backing at that point from 94 to 95, and we started getting the records out there, not just through the trunks of Miguel's car and Matt's car and, you know, Groovy's car, but we actually had store distribution. And an interesting catalyst happened in 1995 in January. There was a young DJ, aspiring DJ within K-Rock's radio station named Casey Phillips, no relation to me or Matt. And he had a radio show at UC Irvine called the Ska Parade. And this dude was like over the top about date rape. And all he wanted to do was get date rape on the radio. So he was at the ground, you know, entry level K-Rock, kind of probably another intern, you know, and he was like, date rape, you got to play it. And some younger cats and K-Rock programming guys, they felt it too. And Sublime was actually starting to get somewhat popular in these like independent venues down in Southern Cal that hadn't made like the Hollywood scene yet. But you go down to Huntington Beach, Long Beach, Fullerton, and they were drawing. So K-Rock decided to air Date Rape in January of 95. The band had just gotten offered a slot on the first Warped Tour. And that song got put on the radio on like a top 5 at 9 battle that K-Rock always did. And we were like calling all the fans, people. There wasn't really internet type of stuff to get the word out. So it was like, everybody call K-Rock. And we were literally in our offices dialing 1-800-567-206, whatever. Play Sublime Date Rape. So one night went by, it won. The next night, it won. The next night it was up against the Chili Peppers, it won. The next night was, and then you're like, oh shit, like, it's not just us calling. And that song just took on a life of its own, which gave Sublime a real push, first like glimpse into like what could happen if something they did hit commercial radio.
Wow. It's so interesting to think about, like, while so many of the tools have changed in the modern industry, so much of the hustle is the same. It's like there's elbow grease at some step of the operation still. And in those days, one of the ways was like literally dialing on your, on your push button phone and calling in the radio station and flooding it. Whereas today that could still be a thing, but there are so many different tools and so many different tactics. So, Matt, I'm curious, like, as we were talking about growing up in a music business family, you were doing your thing in San Diego, John's up in LA doing his thing, but you're very much working together. I wasn't even in San Diego at this point. So really? I was still probably in high school. Okay. Yeah, I was actually creating the phone assault up in Northern California with all the Northern California stations for Sublime's Date Rape at that time, and actually had some radio relationships through. Our dad was like, he was in retail, but was really big on advertising with radio. So I was taking every opportunity with that to try to get Sublime CDs up in to these radio station studios. And, it was like he'd be cutting an ad and I would go knock on the programmer's door or just be like, at that point, it's like everybody worked at Skunk Records, whoever wanted to contribute. It was a culture. It wasn't planned out. It was just a culture. And, this was rewind from what I said my first real gig was in the music business with, Miguel and Slightly Stoopid. Before that, I was really hustling in Northern California, radio stations, college rate, everything. And it was just everywhere. And then it's like, okay, I got a friend in Chico, California. Hey, here's a bunch of CDs. Go make sure. And I think it was just a web like that. Like, John and the core crew that was running Skunk in Beverly Hills. But then there was like, guys like me. And then I had my whole group of friends who were out there and just created this, like, this massive just web of people, But at the end of the day, the band was amazing. The song was great, but we didn't have the internet to get the word out back then. So you kind of had to do it in that way, Yeah. So you were doing this in high school still? Like, I think I was like senior in high school to freshman in college at that point. And where were you at that point? Northern California. Northern California. Campbell, that's California. Where you guys grew up. Area. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there was a question from our good friend Jeff Pliskin about growing up in Rosslyn, Long Island. Do you guys have a connection there? No connection to Rosslyn. I think that's Pliskin's like made up story. We were both born in New York. We were born in the city. Our parents are from Queens and the Bronx, and we moved to California when John was 6 and I was 2. To the Bay Area. Bay Area, yeah. The Rosslyn, that's a shout out to our friend John Carey, who's actually a really old Sublime head, Taper, Stupid head, and a friend of ours, but he's from Rosslyn, so there we go. Inside joke. There we go. Got it. Leave it to Ray's fist. Of course, absolutely. Always something surprising going on when Jeff is dropping Long Island. Yep. What's up, Jeff? So, one of the other questions I wanted to ask, but it seems like a little bit of a meandering answer, is just, when did it click for you guys to work together? But if I'm hearing correctly, it was just sort of predestined. Does it feel like that was the case since you're brothers and you were in the music business family already?
There's a time when it coalesced officially. Matt was finishing college. You know, we always wanted to graduate college and get our degrees in case the music business didn't work out. Obviously, it's a risky business and not for the faint-hearted. So we, you know, listened to our parents and got our degrees. But, you know, Matt moved up to LA and Stoopid was starting to buzz. And
I think it's even prior to that, from what I recall, I think when Silverback really formed, I was in San Diego, and at this point, Kyle and Miles had asked me to manage them, you know, and John obviously, like, you know, John was Big Brothers, like now deeply entrenched in the music scene in Los Angeles. And, you know, I want to say Gasoline Alley went away at that point, right? You weren't working at
Gasoline. When the Barrel Ride got recorded is kind of like Matt, you were saying, Miguel, you know, we were putting out records and the band was it. 2001, I think, is when you moved to LA.
Yeah, I moved to LA right after, I mean, not like 9/11 for some reason it rings. That was like my last kind of, I remember being in San Diego for that. But the way I recall it, and John might recall it differently, but I was working with Slightly Stoopid at the time. Just at that point, booking show, like whatever it took, booking shows. There's no booking agent. There's no, I mean, Skunk Records was, again, it was an imprint. It was popular for Sublime, but Miguel was on the road with Long Beach Dub All-Stars. So there's no real, you know, there wasn't this whole group of people. Everybody kind of went their own ways in the music business, you know, 4 years later. And I was really just concentrating on getting Slightly Stoopid out there and managing them. And at the same time, John had Long Beach Dub All-Stars had created, and John was hands-on on managing them. And I think that's when we formed Silverback. I even remember going down to the federal office to file the papers, like in Commerce, California. And that was like 98-ish.
Wow.
John might have a more deeper story than that, but that's how I remember it.
So, you know, the legend goes, you know, stepping way back for people who might not really have that much of a clue, but, you know, there's an idea that, like, Slightly Stoopid was sort of anointed by Sublime, but John was working with Sublime, and Matt, you were working with Stoopid sort of separately and just at the same time.
Well, Bradley Noel is really to thank, and I've said this before, you know, he left some true gifts, and him and Miguel were really the guys that started to record Stoopid in '96 and introduced us to the band. And Brad had a sticker on his guitar that said Slightly Stoopid. I'm like, what's Slightly Stoopid? There are these kids down in San Diego I'm helping out. You know, I'd like to put them out on Skunk Records. And they were anointed by Sublime in that sense, you know, and we were turned on to these two talented guys that were down in Ocean Beach, San Diego, starting to, you know, come up and take the tools. And Brad was around. By '98, they had recorded that record. Bradley had passed away. Miguel recorded them in '98 for The Longest Barrel Ride and put that out on Skunk. And that's kind of when I said, hey, Slightly Stoopid, this is a band that deserves to be taken more seriously. I started thinking about that. At that point, I was really ingrained in Long Beach Dub, because that's when Sublime had kind of transitioned into Long Beach Dub All-Stars, and they had just gotten a deal at DreamWorks. They got on the road. They were on a bus tour. Sublime or Stoopid was still, you know, just starting to come up, but we were both starting to interact in terms of, you know, like a vision in terms of like, those are the two bands we're going to try to shepherd from here. But Bradley Knowles, who's responsible for the first introduction, he didn't have a license because he got a DUI, and he was supposed to come meet me at the office one day up in Beverly Hills. And he showed up with this kid and this beat up little Mazda B2000 pickup truck. And he's like, hey, this is Miles from Slightly Stoopid. And that's when I first met Miles and kind of saw his face, and I always kind of took it symbolically, like Brad was saying, like, this is Miles. If you want to take this torch and run with it, like, he's the guy that can kind of carry it for you, like miles down the road. And, like that, I don't know, there was just a connection there. That's really, for me, the first introduction. And then, like Matt said, I kind of urged him to get with these guys just to have fun in college. I knew Matt would be interested in music and all that. Like, it wasn't by design or anything. I just thought, like, cool kids. They got some great sounds. They're in the Sublime clique, cute girls. And Matt really
John, exactly, not to cut you off, but exactly what he said when I was moving to San Diego. He's like, you got to link up with Kyle and Miles. They're like the coolest cats. And I was already a fan, like John saying, like Brad had brought him onto the scene. There's the self-titled record before that, which when I heard that, it was like, I was automatically like, this band's fucking rad. And then, seeing them at the House of Blues opening for Sublime, they're just like, they're probably still in high school and just stood up on the stage and ripped it, just power 3-piece. And so then, like a year later, I was moving to San Diego. John's like, you really got to link with Miles and Kyle. Like, they're cool guys. Always have hot girls hanging around them, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're going to college. Like, that's kind of how it happened. And we did. I obviously knew them through what was the scene then, which was basically Skunk Records. And, that's kind of how the introduction was made. It wasn't like a business introduction. I'd just go to shows, like they'd be playing backyard parties in Ocean Beach and just be like, cool, it's something to do and something that was fun and cool.
Next thing I remember, I was visiting Matt down in San Diego in college because I was out of college, and that was fun. And I'd go into his apartment, and it was just filled with boxes of Skunk Records everywhere. So
there's a question from Travis Chambers here. Who made all the bootlegs? Pure Anus, Memories, Seems So Silly, etc. This was that era, right?
Yeah, I think Josh Fischel made Pure Anus. I think a guy named Little Mike in San Francisco made Seem So Silly in the Long Run. Memories was made by a guy up in Everett, Washington. Various different people. Bums Lie, I think, was made by Groovy Greg. Maybe Groovy Greg and Miguel together. Yeah, I mean,
and are these all people who like were sort of part of like the Grateful Dead taper community or was there like was there a network of tapers who were all buddies with each other doing this stuff, or did they all?
It wasn't that centralized or anything like that. I always saw it like that because I always was thinking Sublime was like a cross between the Beach Boys, the Beastie Boys, and the Grateful Dead, and they, I guess the dedication of their fans that they knew them. But that was, it wasn't a centralized taper network, but they definitely were, in various regions and stuff. People were recording them, and tapes would get out there amongst a small community, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The community vibes are something I definitely want to dig into a little bit more, but, we asked one question and a couple more showed up. Let's see. There's one here from Eric Seifert. What happened to Paul, the drummer of that 3-piece? Oh, is it true that he was killed and buried at Compass Point, the Bahamas? That's a little bit of a weird question. Let's keep moving.
It's another inside reference, though, to a really great stupid event that happened down in the Bahamas.
Oh, really? You want to tell us the story?
Just really quick. I mean, it was one of our close friends who also really got into stupid early from the East Coast, and he was getting married in the Bahamas at Compass Point, which is Chris Blackwell's resort, and he wanted some good entertainment for about 40 or 50 close friends that were like some kind of like Deadheads, Fishhead, Stupid Head people, but also like Wall Street people, like guys that were a little older than Stupid, but kind of adopt them because they found out young and they became fans. So he hired them for his wedding to come out to the Bahamas and play an acoustic set inside a house that was owned by Lenny Kravitz that they rented out. And it was right next to the studio at Compass Point, which we toured but didn't record at. And then they played an outdoor show on the bar, like at Compass Point, which the ocean was in the background. There was a huge meteor lightning storm, and Miles and Kyle and Paul, who was a drummer at that point. They played like 3.5-hour sets. Locals from Bahamas came in and rapped and did some, Bahamian reggae stuff. And it just was seeing Stupid in that state of mind in the Bahamas with a lightning storm was definitely one of the true like early experiences.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine the scene. Were you there for that, Matt?
Oh yeah, that was unbelievable. I mean, definitely like one of the best times of my life.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Let's see. So, we sort of touched on this a little bit, but I want to go back to Matt, what you were talking about, that memory of like going into, I think you said it was Culver City to file your paperwork. Sean Freeland asked a question, which we've been sort of talking about loosely the whole time, but what made you guys want to get into managing besides one band or the success of Skunk and Sublime? What made you want to take multiple bands on and form it into a business and company? So I wonder if you could kind of like take us back to that decision to actually form a company and do it. I'll put a question on the screen.
I don't really think it was ever a decision. Like it just kind of happened. Like obviously, we were doing our things with Slightly Stoopid and Long Beach Dub All Stars. And then it was more in the sense that like, band, like for instance, our assistant, the only employee at Silverback at the time, who me and John lived in a house together. It was our office, and this amazing lady, Sally, worked for us. And she was like, she was like both our assistants at the time. And, I remember back then we were getting like fax offers from agencies. Like at this point we had agents and stuff. And she like, come down, bring down like the offer sheet, like here's a $500 offer for Slightly Stoopid play some club in Wyoming. Oh, by the way, have you heard of the band Pepper? Like stuff like that. So she really was instrumental in bringing Pepper in, which was really the fourth band, including Sublime.
Yeah.
And it kind of just, I don't think it was ever thought out. It was just more like, cool, Sally, like they're great. We love them. Slightly Stoopid's about to take them on tour. Like, let's sign them, And then I think the next band after that was Fishbone, who John and I were both huge fans of. Like Fishbone took Slightly Stoopid on the road back in '99. I was on that tour managing. And, it was just like, we grew up, like I learned about Fishbone through the Beastie Boys because I was a huge Beastie Boys fan, and the Beastie Boys, I think, had done a tour with Fishbone.
I didn't know.
And it was just kind of like cool. Like Norwood came up to the office, and great, we got an opportunity to work with Fishbone. They're one of our favorite artists of all time. And then after that, like I really fell in love with this band from Australia, the Beautiful Girls. And that was kind of the next signing, I want to say. I don't know. I might have missed something. John might have a different.
Sounds about right.
Experience, but it was never like a thought out thing. Like, let's go build this company. Like, yeah, it wasn't like that back then, or maybe John and I just weren't like that. But it was more just like a love of this music that kept coming to us through different people or sources, and at that point we had resources to help those artists. We
had resources to help the artists, but we didn't really have any resources. So I'll say, like, it not being a planned thing, we were just straight hustling. We also were trying to make a living out of it, not knowing if a business like this could really sustain. We were just young enough to invest into our passions and to music that we thought was real, and people that we liked. Actually, it was like when we went to Hawaii and met Pepper for the first time, because Sally Knobs, what's up, Sally, had she worked upstairs in my bedroom. Matt was downstairs, so she was bugging me constantly, Pepper, and I was just like, look, if you want to manage this band, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we could. But we went to Hawaii, and Pepper opened for Stupid. They played some shows together there. We met those guys, and we really liked their energy, and it kind of just became trying to build a little bit of a musical family with people that we enjoy too. You know, people we knew Slightly Stoopid would get along with, and you know, like Fishbone, like Matt said, I mean, they were like big brothers early on. I mean, giving props to them. I mean, to me, they're like the first Cali roots band. Like they're really the guys that fused all that stuff for the first time, you know, in a different way. But they gave some opportunities very early on, and you know, they have a lot to do with just a lot of decisions made on the Sublime creative for the last record, like hiring David Kahn to produce, and you know, like they have good taste. They took Stupid out early as kids, you know, and help kind of those guys grow in that respect. And then Norwood came back around us, like Matt was saying, and he was like, man, can you put us in front of some younger audiences? Because it kind of, you start feeling at that point a little bit of this transition culturally, in a sense, like Lollapalooza generation had kind of like, and grunge and all that had gone their way. Punk rock was doing its thing, but it was kind of, but you know, Sublime and No Doubt created this next wave of kind of the bands now that, you know, we're in this community together with. But Fishbone was really, to me, one of the ones that you have to give ultimate props for starting a lot of it.
In the sense that they were like a real catalyst for sort of like directly building that bridge between older reggae and newer reggae, or just like they were a pivotal, like a cornerstone of the whole community?
We're being a pivotal band that broke down barriers and took the reggae form with other forms of music, punk rock, in their case, funk, and you know, ska,
like, yeah.
But
they were visionaries. Like before any of this happened, they were fusing it all together.
Yeah,
awesome.
Probably inventing stage diving too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Angela's the first one.
Have you guys ever stage dived?
I haven't.
I think I've crowd surfed, and I've definitely been in a few mosh pits, but I don't think I ever jumped off the stage.
Yeah, me neither.
Fall off the stage one year, but that's a different story.
2018, we're only in 98 right now, or 2000,
yeah, right.
2000s now.
All right. So, you know, Sean asked another question, which I think is a really interesting segue, and we're going to jump around a little bit chronologically here.
Yeah,
but, you know, Sean's other question, what's up, Sean, by the way? How do you handle it all with so many moving parts? Record label, merch, touring, album releases, promotions, guest artists. And I think that this question really kind of starts to get at the core of like, what is your day-to-day actually like, and how do you manage to take the energy from the ground and turn it into a business? John, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head about that?
I mean, right there, I'm just going to say Sarah, Chris, Amy, and various other people throughout the years that like Matt and myself could not do it without the help and dedication of, you know, other really intelligent people that have grown with us really on the job. It's not anybody that you just necessarily hire. They're people that dedicated their lives to this scene, you know, and developing it as it went on. So they learned, went with it, and it's like the support staff really enables us to do what we do, which to me, between me and Matt, is a lot more instinctual. I feel like we're brothers, and so you know, Matt's really responsible for this day-to-day role with Slightly Stoopid more than I am. I'm doing other stuff, and you know, but it's like instinctual where we help each other and complement each other. So those are two of the broad things that I feel like helps, but there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, every day I feel like we're trying to like learn, get more organized, build systems, figure out a way to, you want to do it all, you know, and you can't do it all. So it's that's the challenge in a lot of respects, you know?
Yeah. Matt.
I think it kind of strips down to, you know, just breaking into the basics, and John touched on it. I mean, we couldn't do it without our support staff. Like, they've all been with us for a long time and are like some of the most talented people in the music business. And, you know, they're amazing, and we wouldn't really be doing what we're doing without them. But breaking it down more just basically, like, we're managers first, and that was the first business we got into together. And I think as a manager, especially in this day and age where you have everything at your fingertips with the internet. You're just, because people ask me all the time, like, what do you do? Like, what is your day to day? And I can't really tell them because every day is different. But as a manager, you're responsible for everything. Like, you're responsible for the release of the record. You're responsible, working with the artist is responsible for the creation of the record, but you're obviously working with them through that. Touring, you're putting together tours, guest artists, even most of the time it's coming from the artist. You're the one kind of arranging things and making sure everybody's getting from A to B. So I think the way we handle so many moving parts is that we're managers first, and that's what managers do, is you're involved in every aspect of it. So I think that's the most simple way of my simple answer of it.
The straightforward way of answering a question that actually is incredibly complex and
yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, we've got actually a bunch more questions coming in here. There's one that a couple people have asked. I'm going to toss up Eric Scott, no relation to Chris Scott's, favorite tour, favorite venue, any hilarious stories. And this really touches on something I wanted to ask you guys as managers as well. Like, maybe let's focus on live first. John, you guys were alluding to a show some years ago where you didn't crowd surf, but you fell off the stage. Maybe that wasn't the most fun one. There was the show in the Bahamas. Are there some other shows like over the years, John, that have really like held a special place in your heart and your memory?
Man, there's so many, honestly. When it's all hitting on the right cylinders and the energy and vibe is right, and you actually love the music that you're working with, man. I mean, it's happened at so many places. From Red Rocks to the Berkeley Square. Like I saw Sublime play one gig at the Berkeley Square that they just tore my head apart. Like seeing Stoopid at the Pinnacle at Red Rocks, like you can't really can't compare them. There's so many of them, and we're blessed to have a lot of those moments. Specific gigs. I'll come back and try to think of something real specific.
Well, just interject if you think of one. Matt, what about you? Any standout shows, tours, venues?
I mean, every tour that we've done takes on a life of its own and becomes, something very special. And that's kind of the greatest thing about what I've enjoyed about, specifically with Slightly Stoopid building their annual summer tour is it's because every tour just, it's the people, the fans, the community, everything about it. But I think for me, my favorite, if I had to put a favorite, because they're all kind of my favorite, they're all kind of like my babies out there, but my favorite had to have been Slightly Stoopid and Snoop Dogg, Blazed and Confused, because that was kind of the first point in my career that I think it was like, holy shit, this is bigger than I ever thought. I shouldn't say it's bigger than I ever thought it would be, but it was like, this is finally like hit what I've always kind of wanted to. And I remember like a moment with John and I, because we used to go see shows at, God, it changed names so many times, but Irvine Meadows all the time. And I remember it was like probably the second show on Blazed and Confused, which was Slightly Stoopid, Snoop Dogg, Stephen Marley, and Mickey Avalon, which, was when Slightly Stoopid stepped up into the sheds and, it was like kind of that next big step for them, 2009. And I remember being in Irvine, John and I walked to the top, like right below the lawn area where the seats ended. And there's like just fires on the lawn, like, because in Irvine, people would light bonfires on the lawn. It was like a thing at that venue.
At the venue.
Yeah. Oh yeah. On the lawn. It was kind of like a thing at that venue. People would light fires and it'd just be like, you just see the lawn and it was like just people having like fire dancing, like kind of crazy, like bonfires. And I remember John and I just like looked at each other. It was like, I don't even think we said anything. It was just kind of looking at each other and be like, holy fucking shit. Like, this is really happening right now. Like, you know,
That was
50,000 people.
2009 is definitely a highlight for me as well. You know, I mean, I was to have Slightly Stoopid, Snoop Dogg, and Stephen Marley, and Mickey too. So, 15,000 people at Irvine Meadows, like Matt was saying, in 2009, before weed was legal. You know, like that's the one that I hope we can resurrect again for Blazing Confused too, because so much has changed since then in terms of the world and how cannabis is involved now, or is legal, and is like, it just, Blazing Confused was the pinnacle of, you know, that decade for us for sure.
Yeah.
That tour was like unbelievable. Like the after parties, like you'd have Kyle Stupid with Corrupt and the Dog Pound like freestyling on the mic in front of 500 people who happen to get backstage. Like, you know, it was kind of when it all kind of came together. And like for me, almost like it was always a business, but at that point it was just like, wow, we're like really, you know, at this level now. And I also think at that point, there's kind of where the pressure came, is like, hey, we got to really kind of keep this going and take it to the next level.
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, at that point. But we'd already been doing it for 11 years at that point, you know, so, but that's kind of when it, you know, definitely a favorite tour if I had to pick one, although all of them were great and all of them have memories like that, you know, but.
Two other events that I wanted to bring up that are definitely pinnacle highlights of my career have to do with a musical hero of mine, Mr. Bob Weir from Grateful Dead. You know, Bob's been extremely supportive of the groups on Silverback, and he welcomed Slightly Stoopid into TRI Studios when TRI first opened in 2011, I think. And, you know, actually assembling something like that where it all came together, and you had Slightly Stoopid, Carl Denson, Ian and Ivan Neville from Dumpster Funk,
Don Carlos,
and Weir, all in this like first streaming experiment. And, you know, none of us had all been in an environment like that together. Man, like the two TRI shows are extremely special for me because it's like, and Tommy Chong, don't forget about that.
Tommy Chong was hosting the first TRI.
Wow.
Dropping wisdom. Like, I mean, those type of things are like, pinch me, is this real type shit. And when it actually happens and the results kind of defy expectations, it's even that much more satisfying. And, you know, another big one, not stupid related, but we did 2018 Lock-In with the Foundation of Funk, which is the original rhythm section of Meters, Dumpsta, and Cyril, and Bob Weir, John Mayer, Billy Kreutzmann, and Mickey Hart. Joined them as a surprise to the audience. Like, nobody knew in the audience. Of course, I knew, but like, for that to happen, they played a meter set with four members of the three original members of the Grateful Dead and John Mayer. Again, like,
unbelievable.
Yeah. So there's those ones, but you know, sometimes you get chills, and even in the smallest club show that is just banging, you know. And like I said, there's so many that all of our artists have been a part, but those definitely ring to me as some of the ones that have made them indelible.
Yeah, you know, you guys, I have you guys to thank for one of those experiences. For myself, was the first time the Movement ever played Red Rocks, and it was in 2017. And you know, like when that tour got confirmed and we were invited to be part of it, it was really just like, holy shit, like, we're actually going to play Red Rocks. And I remember the feeling of being there for the first time and just being like, oh my God, is this real? And they, you know, they were the first to four. They weren't even headlining the thing. But just a couple years later, you know, they're selling out the Cervantes Ballroom in Denver. And I had another moment where like Ways of the World had just come out, you know, 6 months before or something. The tour was crushing. And there was this moment where the band was playing a song called "Take Me to the Ocean," which had, been getting a lot of traction. And like, I was standing in the crowd, and I saw the look on Jay Smiles and Josh's face when they heard the whole room singing along with them, and just witnessing that moment of the artists on stage for me was like a deeply touching memory. And, you know, when you're describing the being on the back of the lawn at Irvine and seeing those 15, it's a feeling that you can't really put words around. But I think that
feeling,
that's like, it's like, man, all the shit that a manager has to deal with all the time. That's the reward. A lot of times it's that moment, you know?
Yeah. It's a feeling, honestly, that I still get, you know, and even most recently, like we've been shut down for so long and Slightly Stoopid did one of the drive-in shows, and just to see live music again, like, but as a manager, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is like, we're all fans too, you know, and we live it. And when you get that feeling, you get that feeling. And I think when you stop getting that feeling is when maybe you got to stop managing or move on, you know. But that's an awesome story. I remember sitting with you at Red Rocks, watching the movement in the sound booth, and it was like, damn, did they sound good? And you were like just a proud papa in there.
I was so stoked, man. What, you know, one thing about music, when it hits, you feel no pain. You know, Bob Marley just nailed it with that one. So let's segue into, you know, sort of a similar conversation, but talking about the recorded music in particular. You know, obviously as managers, part of your business is focusing on an artist's live business. Another huge part is the recordings themselves. John, do you remember any moments in the studio at any point over the years where you're just like, wow, I was there when that happened?
I mean, being there for the entire, well, not the entire recording, because actually some of the Sublime Total Access stuff that I was there for, you know, specifically what I got doing time and that session was pretty amazing, because I was the first, you know, I had heard the band play all this music, and I knew that the studio stuff could be something like really different and unique. Didn't really know how it would go with them and a producer. And that session was David Kahn. He kind of metamorphosized, caressed me down what I got doing time on April 29th into these masterpieces that, you know, again, like the end result was something that kind of defied your expectations, to where you were just those were really, really special. Just hearing the music like that after going through the process with the band to get there for a few years, and listen to other records which are equally as good, you know, but just not the same. Those were incredibly, you know, that moment itself, you know. And the first time Paul Leary actually sent back the tapes for Santeria and some of the songs he did on the Sublime record, that's the first time in the studio I was like, damn, you know, we got something really insane.
Yeah.
I remember the first time Slightly Stoopid was recording, the Fake Nightclub was the studio. They were in Sublime studio on Anaheim Street in Long Beach. They had this makeshift little dive warehouse studio, and I remember seeing Opie in there, and he was like threatening Miles and Kyle when they were like recording, like, you know, yelling at the dudes over the soundboard, like, you up on it, just fun shit, you know, joking around. But hearing those guys record that first stuff was really satisfying too, you know, because we had seen the band playing and all that. We didn't necessarily know what the record would come out to be. And Brad Noel makes an appearance on that record too for I Ain't No Prophet. And Prophet was a song that I heard very early. With the Brad thing with Miles, I was always kind of pushing, hoping that Sublime would have recorded that and, you know, bumped it. But, you know, there is that outtake that made it on Everything Under the Sun. But yeah, I mean, those are the two early recordings that I remember, you know, most fondly.
Cool. So Matt, like, talk to me a little bit about the process of, like, you know, there's being in the studio itself, but there's a part before the band ever even goes into the studio where, like, you know, now it'll be like a voice memo on a phone. And then there's a whole section afterwards and mixing and, you know, but being in the studio itself is kind of just like this finite moment where things turn from ideas into reality.
Yeah.
Your experience over the years, like following that whole process.
I'm going to bring up one because it's kind of off the beaten path of your question, but probably back to like the one that John just answered. Like, I think my favorite experience in the studio was probably Stupid's acoustic roots, because it was just so non-planned out. Like, I had gotten them on a radio show, pre-recorded radio show, 45 minutes, live air, which was back then. We didn't have the internet, so it was like, get your music out there how you could. And there's a radio station in San Diego, Rock 105, that had a pretty killer local show, and the DJs like all that, like just Slightly Stoopid want to take over the full show. And I just remember, like, for me, I like, Self-Titled and Barrel Ride had come out, but what I would always love was going over to Kyle's dad's apartment's house, and him and Miles would just be jamming acoustic together, playing songs. And it was kind of like the perfect alignment. We got this opportunity, but their drummer had just left the band or they'd parted ways with their drummer. So it was just the two of them. And I remember, like, them talking, it was like, oh, cool, we'll do it acoustic, And I remember that day vividly. I went to go pick Kyle up. I think he was at work. And I went to go pick him up at work. I think he was working at a liquor store. And he brought a 12-pack of, I forget what kind of beer, just kind of irrelevant. And then we went to go pick Miles up, and he was playing horseshoes on the beach. And, we just kind of drove to the radio station, and they just rolled up there with their two acoustic guitars. And it was just like, from the first drum, there was kind of, I think they're off a little bit, which is on the record. And they just kind of looked at each other and just went. And it was just 45 minutes of beautiful acoustic music. And to me, that was like one of those points in times in the studio that you'll never kind of have again, because it wasn't like a traditional studio session. And, that to me was like the greatest experience I've ever had in the studio.
Yeah. And it's like a lightning in a bottle type of moment. Almost.
It was totally lightning in the bottle. And I think it was like 2 years removed from the longest barrel ride, and we didn't really have.
Al Guerra popped up on the feed.
What's that?
He said Al Guerra just popped up.
Oh yeah, Al Guerra was the DJ who got us in there.
Oh, that's awesome.
The drummer
did. Al?
He said it was Budweiser.
I don't even remember what it was, but there's definitely buds in the studio too.
Awesome.
Yeah, Al Guerra had called me. He's like, and he was a huge Slightly Stoopid fan. He's just like, man, let's take over. I got a 45-minute show. Like, let the boys take it over, and they did, and we got an album out of it. So it was kind of that was a fun experience.
Yeah, I'm going to throw Al's comment back on there just because I think it's worth giving him a little bit more shine. Like, this is the album that you guys also just pressed on vinyl for the first time, right?
We just released it on vinyl for the first time.
Yeah, and of course, it went like wildfire. I ordered my copy as soon as I could because I didn't want to be left out. But, it just goes to show that, like, that's one of those moments, Matt, that you experienced, and like you're one of the very few people aside from Al and the band.
Just me, Al, and the band. I don't even know if Al had an engineer in there, but there's one engineer in there.
Wow.
It was just the five of us in there, and it wasn't planned to be a record. It was just supposed to be a 45-minute performance for a radio show that Al hosted every Sunday. So
good thing he hit record, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So
that one got approved for release.
Yes, for real. So, I mean, do you feel like the guys were, I mean, obviously a live performance of any sort, a band is going to be somewhat reluctant to release it until they've listened back, but was it a hard sell, or did they hear it and instantly say like, yeah, let's do it?
I think at that point it's more like, it was 2 years removed from Barrel Ride when they released it. We didn't really have, the finances to go into the studio to record another record. I don't know if it was finances or time, you know, it was just they were recording, but it wasn't like a full album wasn't put together yet. And I think it was mostly for financial reasons at that time. And it was just kind of like, you know, it was crazy because the station, like back then, the only form of digital advertising we had was the old Skunk Records chat boards, which had all these Skunk Records fans from around the world. And I remember the station had like been getting blown up to re-air it, like, because all these people from out of the state, out of San Diego, were asking to hear it, and it was kind of catching, like fans had like recorded like a little off of like, I don't even know what they were taping off, but there were some fan tapes out there that were like third generation on the chat board and on some of the like taper sites. I think Sublime Archive was a big taper site back then. And, you know, people just started blowing up the station. The station, Al re-aired it on one of his other shows. And I think at that point it was just like, let's print some CDs and put them out there through our website, you know. Or wasn't even our website. It wasn't sophisticated enough that we had our own store. There's like some buddies of ours up in LA that had like a direct to commerce fan site for music that we released it on.
What year did it actually come out?
2000, I want to say January 2001.
Okay, and how long between the day in the studio and the day you pressed it on CDs?
Probably like 6 months.
Wow. So was CD Baby a thing at that point yet?
Not quite yet, no.
Man.
Maybe it was, but we weren't aware of CD Baby.
Wow.
It might have been 2000. It might be like 6 months off. It might have been recorded in 99 and put out in 2000.
Wow. Wow. There's another question that somebody popped up here. Let me scroll through back and find it, because somebody else asked this question earlier on the subject of vinyl. Steve Littman, tell the story about the Hash record and who has it now. And somebody earlier asked, is there a Hash record that actually plays?
Well, the Hash record is smoked, unfortunately.
I don't know if that's unfortunate. It's great.
It's a good thing and a bad thing. That was one of the more unique accomplishments for sure for us. There's an analog vinyl mastering studio in LA called Capsule Labs, and audio genius in there, Gil Tamazian, and he mastered a lot of vinyl. Speaking of vinyl, so I was just in there actually mastering some stupid vinyl, and he was showing me, hey, here's a record with, bamboo and polyurethane, and here's a record with, I don't know, different picture discs and all that. He's like, you know what? I really want to make a record of pot. And I'm like,
me too.
That sounds cool. I'm like, can we do it? Like, I'm like, I know where to get, materials. And I'm like, look, I'm down to do it. I really want Stupid Records, Controlled Substance Sound. We want to be the first ever to make a record out of hashish that actually plays. So I called a guy named Rodney Lockwood, who's a friend of mine. He was an original bass player. Well, I don't know if he was original, but he was in the band Phillips, the band that played the very last show with Sublime. He was pressing OG Bubble Hash up in the Bay Area, and he was generous enough to say, oh, man, that's a cool idea. I got, I'll drive this stuff down there, pre-legalized as well. We're talking about, what year was it? I don't know, it's probably 5-6 years ago now at least. And so he drives down about, 400 grams of OG Bubble Hash and these vats. And my friend has these like crazy Gil Sound Capsule Lab. Sorry, he has an old vinyl pressing machine, like the old school ones. You see like parts moving, and it's crazy. And he was willing to put all this bubble hash on the press, and we put Slightly Stoopid. We made a master Slightly Stoopid's Dabbington. That was a song I felt should be on there, and we pressed Dabbington onto the hashish and press. The heat meter goes up. It hits a point, and at this point, it's trial and error. About 180 grams of bubble hash each one. The first one didn't work. And I mean, those are like $9,000 in material. Which once you press them, you can still smoke it, but if it doesn't take the grooves and all that, you can't press it again. So by
the whole place just like super hot boxed the whole process.
No, because the hash was like a resin, and it just like vinyl, it pressed in the machine and kind of stayed compressed.
Got it.
And on like a certain heat temperature, and then you take it out and bake it or let it cool so it held. And I think on the third one that day, we got one that actually had grooves when it hardened. And, you know, we press it at the right temperature. The material has to be a certain, and we pulled it out, and he put it on his, you know, we walked in the other room where you could drop the needle or you test the plate, and he dropped it on there, and we got the audio of Slightly Stoopid's Dabbington on literally nothing but OG bubble hash that was pressed as a record. And we were like, I mean, it was the room exaltation. We knew we did something that no one else had ever done yet. Because, I mean, to do this, you have to own a pressing plant or have a mastering facility that's willing to ruin a $250,000 piece of equipment.
Right.
An experiment. And you have to have a buddy that's willing to give you about 10 grand in hash, too. So, you know, we got the audio out of it. We all jumped around and celebrated. And what do? The first thing, you start breaking off pieces of this record and, you know, testing your work. And I took it back to Silverback. It stayed there on the plate for probably a year and a half or so. And everybody that would come in and look at it, we would chip off a little piece and give it to them. I thought we were going to be able to do another one. And the reason why it took so long to get round 2 off the ground, which did happen, and Billboard magazine, Steve Bloom came by, and Shirley Halperin from Billboard Variety. They actually filmed it. There's pictures. There's an article you could search out there. We made 3 more prototypes, and those ones we pressed Bob Weir and Slightly Stoopid on, along with Dabbington. We took a song, forget which one it was, from TRI 1 or 2. I can't even remember. And I called Bob Weir's people. I was like, hey, I got a great idea. We made a record fully out of hash, and we put this thing from TRI on there. And they were like, stop the presses. You know what I mean? Bob doesn't want his name affiliated with anything, you know, with cannabis or illegal substances, because it wasn't legal yet. So then I was like, well, shit, what we need to do is try to make this record an event for legalization, and really try to get, you know, cooperation from some bigger names and make a platinum record, hash record, that we would auction off to benefit medical marijuana or cancer research and make a statement to legalize. At this point, Slightly Stoopid had recorded Everyday Life, Everyday People and have the song Legalize It on there. And the vision was to get Snoop and Be Real to both voice on it. I took it over to Be Real's studio, told him the whole story. He liked it. He's like, okay, I'll do something on it. And we gave him Legalize It and also the song Everyday Life, Everyday People, because Kyle wanted him to do something on that too. And he told me he was going to bust on Legalize It. He sent us back the files, and it was his rap on Everyday Life, Everyday People. So, and then Snoop and Mary Jane were trying to get behind it, but we could never nail Snoop down for the studio. And, you know, what became, you know, these grandiose ideas you have sometimes don't come to fruition as easily as you would think. And this was not an easy one. So that never happened. The press did happen for Legalize It without those guys and these prototypes. And those ones did not take as well as the first one, so we never put them out to the public. And then I thought we'd try again with the media storm. And then Gil's machine got retired. The studio place where it was at, I think, got bought out or a partnership, and his mechanism, which is, it's in storage now. So you need about $150K to buy it, and then we can make another hash record then.
All right, let's round up everybody. Spend $5. We'll get 150K and make some more hash records.
I mean, the record
PayPal donations.
So
Yeah.
that's tribulations of that. But yeah, that was another. I mean, pinch yourself and can't believe this shit actually happened.
So did the machine didn't get ruined the first time?
Oh, no, he went on and pressed more vinyl off of it after that. It just the facility where it was stationed and his mastering studio and all that got kind of turned into a different business model. And I don't know, he retired that press for a little bit, and I think he just wants to sell it. I mean, I would, of course, if we did it, have him be a part of it, because I mean, between Gil Tamazian and Rodney Lockwood, I think give both those guys a lot of credit for going through this and making it a reality.
Somebody's got to have the vision, man, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a bunch more people dropping questions in here. We touched on TR for just a minute, and Josh Green is asking, will the second TRI show recording ever get released?
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I don't know. I mean, we're working on it. There's definitely there's thoughts of it, but we don't. It's kind of decisions out of our hands.
Fair enough. Well,
Yeah.
we can hope.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. So there's another one that I just saw pop up here. Where was it? Just one second. Somebody was asking, oh yeah, Sunshine Cantu. What makes an artist really stand out above the rest, in your opinion, that makes you want to work with them? John?
I mean, for me, it kind of comes down to soul, in a sense. Like, I don't really care if you're the best musician in the world or can play guitar the best, or anything like that. I think that it's when you could kind of recognize an unmanufactured quality in somebody that resonates with you and has a style, I mean, one of the things for me that I've always gravitated to is just it doesn't matter what genre of music, but a unique style, or how does Brad say, a unique style and unique fashion. That's first, but it's different. Sometimes it's a band and it's the sum of the parts that is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts type of thing, and other time it's just one person's voice or something like that. In the case of the artists that we work with, Bradley, Angelo, Ivan Neville, Ethan Tucker, Jacob Knoll now. I mean, Trish and Hyrie on the label side. I don't know. There's something that's very unique, and there's a unique soul and style that they have. That's what kind of, for me. And then I'm really, I love songs. So if you're able to write a good song with an acoustic guitar in your voice, and that translates, because you can only polish a turd so much in the studio.
Yeah.
Something
go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, and that's if a song really hits me and it's real, and then you have that kind of stylistic, unique quality to it.
I think for me, it's definitely comes down to songs first. Like if you hear a song that just hits you, and then just vibe to, just definitely got to vibe with the artist you're working with. But yeah, I mean, a great song and just good people to work with is definitely the main things. Like John said, just when you see an artist that you feel doesn't need, it's unmanufactured, it's just there's something about it that's great that makes you love it, is I think where we kind of always find things. And I think every artist on Silverback has a little bit of that. And we're definitely selective. We're definitely, we don't, we love a lot of artists, and it's just got to kind of click for us.
I'm going to say this. It's also, there's so much great talent out there. So if you're an artist and you're listening, like you can't say yes to everything. You know, it's like, but sometimes it's about timing, or you get
Yeah.
situation with the band. Like, if we hadn't gone to Hawaii for Stupid and Pep, we might not have signed Pepper. Like there was something there like that too. And then it's just sometimes timing. So you should always continue to pursue what you're doing and keep honing your craft in, and mastering what you do, and making great songs. Because if it doesn't hit somebody, whether it's Matt or myself or Rootfire or Ineffable or whoever else out there, Sony Records, it's like every single band we've worked with. I mean, Matt can attest to this too. I mean, before I try to sign Sublime to major labels before Gasoline Alley. Same with Stupid. Like, we had Stupid and Jimmy Iovine from Interscope Records office. He, signed the band, and then kind of there's a whole other. It's you just never know when those things are going to line up timing wise, and when the timing is right, something does happen too. You need to have that plus the talent, So I'd say just hold on to your dream, what you're doing, and keep pursuing it. You know when the right thing, set of factors is going to line up.
Yeah, I think any artist too, just keep doing it. Like, there's different, like John was saying, it's timing, but artists could do a lot on their own now too. And it's, it's just, it just comes down to loving a song, loving an artist, and having, where timing lines up, where you have the bandwidth to take it on.
Yeah. They say that like luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And, like you guys going to Hawaii and like having that connect, that was like, it was just sort of seems like maybe it was luck and Pepper was a band that was prepared and you guys were in a position. And like, if that moment hadn't happened, it may not have become the pivotal thing that it did that led to so much after it. There's this artist that I used to work with, shredding guitarist named Scott Pemberton up out of Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, and he once told me, he was the first person I ever heard say, the best way to succeed is just don't give up.
It's so true. I mean, you gotta kind of do your thing, and people are going to notice at a certain point, and just eventually, like if you keep doing your thing, and there's so much you could do now with the internet and streaming and all that you just keep doing it, and people are going to notice, and people probably already are noticing. It's just a matter of having timing line up, and there's a lot that goes on in all our lives, within the music industry and outside the music industry, that it all just has to kind of click at once.
Yeah.
And every band we've ever signed, it's kind of been, I feel like there's been a relationship there for years before we actually signed them, whether it was Stupid, Sublime, LB Dub, Revolution, Fishbone, like every single one of them, there was probably a 2-year period that we were just friends and helping, helping each other out, or, just kind of getting acquainted with each other. And yeah.
Yeah. So this is, there's another question here from Kyle Cairns, which I wanted to touch on in sort of a big way, because throughout this entire conversation, you guys have made references back to like the phone army, the chat boards, the fact that you were friends with these people before you worked with them. And I personally feel like you guys have very much been leaders in the whole movement of modern reggae music in America and the culture that brings people together and creates a community. Kyle is asking, what drives Stupid and Silverback to give back from a community relations aspect? One of you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start and John can kind of give his opinion. I think for Slightly Stoopid, like the band itself, Kyle and Miles, like they've always just been all about their fans. Like they never gave a shit what the music industry thought about them. They never gave a crap if radio was playing them or not, if they were getting, media looks, all those guys ever cared about is if their fans was their fans, stupid heads, and whether that was 10 people in a room or 15,000 people in an amphitheater, all Miles and Kyle ever cared about was their fans. And I think for Silverback, and I'll test this to John grew up a Deadhead. So I think a lot of what we do kind of follows that Grateful Dead model of building that fan base. And, you know, the Grateful Dead, although later they became, you know, a band that was played all over the radio and even MTV, like before that, it was just Deadheads going all across the country. And I think because that's the only thing you can really control, like you can't control what the radio station's playing. You can't control if Spotify's, you know, doing this, or if Apple Music, or if Rolling Stone's going to write about your band. But you can control, you know, you can't control your fan base, but you could have that relationship with your fan base to where they want to keep telling people, you know, about this band or about this song. And I think that's kind of what has carried us. And that was always our philosophy with our artists, was like, cool, we're going to work MTV, and we're going to work radio, and we're going to work Spotify, and we're going to work Apple Music. But at the end of the day, the one known quantity we have is getting people that love the music to spread the word and create the community. And that's the only way I could really answer that.
Yeah. So John, how did did you grow up going, like, following Dead shows around the country and experiencing that, you know, day after week after month?
I mean, I was pretty much a West Coast head. I as far as I traveled was like Las Vegas and Arizona to ever see them. But I grew up with that culture. Bob Weir went to my high school. He actually got kicked out of my high school. My Spanish teacher told me when he was like 93, and I started wearing a tie-dye shirt to school and going to Dead shows at Frost Amphitheater in Stanford. The Spanish teacher I was in class, he's like, "Oh yeah, Grateful Dead. So, you know, Bob Weir flunked out of here back in '66 or whatever."
Wow.
And so yeah, I got to see him at Frost Amphitheater in '86 for my first show and just got hooked. And that, like Matt said, kind of changed my whole outlook in terms of how I envision music and community and being affected by music in a way that was transformative. You know, some of that had to do with the use of psychedelics in an exploratory way, you know, as a younger music fan, and just, you know, finding out about these like things in life. And once then that was a, you know, wow, when that finally clicked, you're like, holy shit, you know what I mean? And always have applied that philosophy because that was my experience. In terms of the social relations with the fans, I mean, I'm just appreciative of, you know, and blessed that so many people have supported what I believe in and gravitated to the music that I've been able to be a part of, and that Silverback's put out there, and that myself, and, you know, get to cultivate. And, you know, I just want to be grateful to the people that have supported that, you know. So Kyle, Kyle, he's come through the office and spent time like some of the people that come in have spent their time for no gain, you know. I mean, maybe they get to go to a show or two now, or they know us, but like that kind of stuff, like it just, that propels me to give back in a sense. I mean, I wish I could to everybody. Sometimes, you know, it's like it's difficult, but really that's to me like the philosophy. And, you know, I want to be as Slightly Stoopid as the world. All of our artists are the flow. We're not untouchable. We're people that, you know, want to get to know the people that are around us and vibe on that. You know, it goes for the fans and everybody.
Yeah, I'd say this for this whole music scene. I mean, it's really the fans that have carried it. You know, like it's not, you know, yeah, some of the bands get radio play and get, you know, great media looks, but it's not really, you know, it's not like the type of music that is necessary yet, except, you know, like on the cover of Rolling Stone, or, you know, getting the huge mass media looks. But it's still a huge music scene and a huge music family. And you see it at Closer to the Sun. You see it at all the festivals, you know, like it's it's a community, and the fans take pride in that, because they are like John was saying, like a lot of the core fans have interned at our office. Like it's we've always adopted that and said, hey, like some of our employees even are, whoever it is started out on the street team, and it was like, hey, you're smart, you love the music, come intern. And it's kind of trickled like out as like the fans really have carried this music and carried the marketing for this music and has built this gigantic world that we're all in.
Yeah, man, if it weren't for the fans, we wouldn't have jobs. That's just like straight up. It's like the fans literally do support it, so giving back to them makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me too, like a third part of that, and it's something that I would say for Slightly Stoopid and the other bands as well, Dumpster Funk in their New Orleans community and George, like it's also these bands want to give back and be socially conscious and use their voice to do something that elevates our human race, our lives and whatnot. So a lot of times, like, we wish we could do more too. We're like now kind of faced with the challenges of a pandemic and live touring being put on pause, and everybody needs help, and it's like it's kind of overwhelming, in a sense. But definitely one of the things for us and going into the future, once the landscape kind of evolves, we're all really interested too in trying to do good by the world through some kind of socially conscious charitable effort, and hopefully we can grow that as well.
Yeah, there's a question about COVID here, and I think this is a really interesting question. This is from Weij. Do you guys know Weij? I don't know.
What's up, Weij? We're one of the original Stupid Heads.
There we go. All right.
What's Locos. Before that, Sublime, Long Beach Dubhead. See you.
There we go. So Weij is asking, with live music venues on the brink of bankruptcy and fallout from COVID, do you think the music industry is being forced to evolve and adapt? Could there be a silver lining to all of it? Matt?
I think there's definitely a silver lining in all this, because we've all got to be more creative now. And we have to, like this summer was kind of the first summer that I've been through without summer tour season and festival season and all that. And people need music more than ever now. Like, music is healing for the soul, and no pandemic, no music venues going out of business is ever going to hold back that music is going to touch people. So I think we all have to adapt and deliver music in different ways to fans, whether it's live streaming, drive-in shows, recording new records. But I think it's, the silver lining of it all is, at least for us on the business side of the music industry, is we're going to have to get a little bit more creative, and it's not just going to be the same machine of tour, play festival, tour, write an album, and I think the silver lining of it all is there's going to be some killer fucking music coming out of this. And there already has been. Like, we've been a part of some live streams that have been epic, whether it's been Dumpster Funk or Kyle and Miles doing their solo sets on Facebook, or, doing some, live streams like Stephen Marley just did something for Dell Computers. Fortunate Youth did their drive-in shows. Like, it's just, we're still reaching people, and people are coming, getting the music. And I think it's almost, more like important to the fan now to see live music in whatever form it is, or hear recorded music in whatever form it is.
Yeah. John, any silver linings in your perspective?
I mean, those ones that Matt said, I know part of the question too is, what, as a musician, like, what can you do during COVID and all that? And, like, the technology has been there, but this was the tipping point for, streaming and for live delivery. I don't think that's going anywhere after, we get back, it's now part of the equation. It's, you have an audience at home that wants to, consume this, this food that's music. So get your streaming game together. I mean, like now, dude, some of the streams from our younger artists, you really got to know Ethan Tucker and Law, playing these acoustic, intimate things they weren't doing before too. Kind of like when Stupid had to do acoustic roots. You're just like, oh man, that's what it's like, stripped down. And tomorrow I wanted to plug a stream. It's for the saving of the Asian Elephants Foundation, is put together by these guys at USC that run Silent Zoo Studios in Glendale, and it's going to be Law full band and Ras One, Long Beach Double All Stars, playing together. And it's up on our socials and on Law socials. If you want to tune in, you got to buy a ticket for the Asian Elephants. But yeah, just doing good things, charity things too. Now there's another income stream, so you can help a charity by having your fans donate. They can help you if you're. There's just a lot of creative, technology, and the paradigm's changing. Like Matt said, we all got to kind of like get creative, use these tools that have been out there, and figure out a way to keep things interesting.
Yeah, I saw one other question on there, Reed, that I'll kind of play into this one, and it's like, what should artists, like be doing in this time where you can't tour? And
yeah,
I think now more than ever, it's important for you to connect with your audience, because you can't do it through the live and fans in front of a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel, because I've experienced this as a fan, like, when your favorite artist is in their living room or their home studio playing stripped down to acoustic, like I've been hit in the same way as we were talking about earlier when you saw the movement at Red Rocks, or John and I seeing, the Irvine Meadows show. Like, live streams still give fans that. And, I think for an artist, it's definitely really important to connect with your audience right now.
Yeah, in any way that you can, really.
In any way you can.
It's going to be through the screen. You're going to have to make it special. So, there are a couple of different directions we could go here, but I want to go forward and backwards just a little bit. Somebody asked a question earlier, like, let's think about moving forward and like what the last couple of years have been like. There's a question that came up about Silverback and red light management. And let's see, Dakota Menzor. Whoops, hold on, that's not the one. Here it is. George Taylor, how did the partnership with Core and Capshaw Red Light Management come about? How has Silverback benefited from the merger and partnership? So the next evolution of the company, obviously.
Yeah. So our relationship with Corin kind of goes back to, the mid 2000s. And, when we were, we had Slightly Stoopid and Pepper. There was major label interest. At the time, John and I were kind of thinking more in the way of like, if there's a way we could do this and have success without giving up ownership of the artist masters, because it's just, back then it was more common for an artist to sell their masters to a record label.
Right.
Because the record labels had all the mass media relationships. And, John and I were kind of, and again, I don't think it was anything like, just more than like, hey, these bands are great. They have fan bases. If there's a way that we could retain, let the artists retain ownership of their masters and still have success. And in some cases it was necessity because the label deals fell through, or in other cases an artist was signed to a label not doing anything. And, Mark Geiger, who now former head of William Morris, who we had both those artists with, and Corn Capshaw had started a partnership called Reincarnate, which was a distribution service for artists and artist managers that wanted to do things the independent way. But again, back then it wasn't as simple as, loading your music up into a computer and pushing it out to iTunes, or you actually needed record distribution. And I think we were in a strong spot because, you know, Slightly Stoopid at that point of time and already sold hundreds of thousands of records, and Pepper was selling a great amount of music too. And Geiger and Korn had approached. No, it actually first happened. Bruce Floor wanted to sign Slightly Stoopid to RCA, but then he left to ATO, and we had always had philosophical talks about the music industry. And I think John and I had always let him know, like, hey, you know, we love what you're doing with ATO. We want to do that, but with our world of music. And they had given us distribution, you know. At that point, we were able to fund some records, and, you know, it started there. And then over the years, like, you know, there was other deals that came to us and with other companies that we didn't do, and we always wanted to maintain our independence, but it just came to a point where we felt like it was the right move. There, you know, it was, again, just like we're now 15 years of history with Corin, Bruce Floor, other managers and parts of that company. And it was just for John and I, just, hey, this, you know, these guys have tools and resources that we don't have. They understand our culture. They don't want to mess with our culture. They just want to add to it. And it was just the right timing for us to make that step. And I'm honestly more excited about the future for us as I have been in a long time, just so we can continue what we're doing, but still have the resources of, you know, a major, you know, company behind us.
Yeah. So John,
just to add to that, another catalyst.
I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick.
You know, we had maintained relationships over the years with the red light community, and, you know, played festivals that bands were at together, always stayed in touch. But in 2018, Slightly Stoopid played the Cap Theater in Port Chester, New York, which is a venue that's owned proprietarily by Pete Shapiro, Relics, and Fare Thee Well. And Pete Shapiro is a good friend of ours, brain trust in the music business, and of course got Trey and the Dead together for Fare Thee Well. So he met me at the theater. We were sitting up in the balcony watching the band, watching Stoopid, and it was one of those just magical nights where Stoopid was just crushing. And if you've never been in the Cap Theater, this is one of those also venue shows that was like so on point, hit you in smack dab in the middle of the head how good it was. And Pete was like, damn, these guys have gotten really good. I don't think he had seen him for a few years, since Lock-In maybe or something. And Stoopid was just on fire too. And Pete's like, yeah, let's go down on the floor. And he's like, you know, you really should talk to Corin again. I'm doing deals with them, and, you know, I could set something up. Or sure, you know, we'll talk. You know, we're doing what we do, and it's great. So the next morning I flew home, and I think the next morning Matt and I were having lunch in the Peninsula Hotel with Bruce Eskowitz and Corin, and talking about where Silverback had gone since the last time we checked in. And like Matt said, it just seemed like the right thing to do, you know, as the music business consolidates. And I mean, this is a music business club right now. It's like, you know, our business is changing and changing quick. And now another, you know, major event happened to shift the paradigm again. So we just felt it was time to affiliate with some guys that, you know, might bring other opportunities to the table for us, or, you know, be able to integrate with a wider net and ecosystem. And, you know, the reggae community is that we really respect and admire, and are blessed to have been a big part of that. And our musical tastes are pretty wide spectrum. So, you know, we feel like we kind of made that based upon that. Like, we like to explore new territory as well.
Yeah. So, you know, it reminds me of how you were describing the relationship with an artist before you sign them. You were kind of describing how, like, and with a lot of artists, you're in each other's orbit for years before there's a real partnership. And it sounds like the Red Light merger is more or less a natural evolution in the same way, where like you knew each other, you had relationships, and you explored something at one point. It wasn't the right time, but some years later, you still have that relationship. Things you're still connected in those ways, and like sometimes the timing is right. And you know, I can relate to the feeling of like joining with a larger company and just feeling like, wow, there's something, you know, there's something really exciting about that, about thinking about like, wow, our team expanded, our network, you know, there are more people who are like on our team and really like in our corner now. And that's a really special thing. And I honestly will always tie it back to like the nature of community, whether it's between an artist and their fans, or a business like Silverback and a business like Red Light and Rootfire and Ineffable. And, you know, the community aspect of it is something that I think we've all really embraced, especially during COVID, because it's like shit's falling apart. We better help each other out and nurture the community, ourselves included, you know?
Well, I mean, you guys too. I mean, I think they're a little bit younger than myself and Matt, but we just have massive respect for, you know, those, you know, next level, next wave people. Like, I mean, in all honesty, I mean, we were kind of at the technological revolution on the front end of it and had to adapt really quick. But, you know, a lot of young, talented people are leading the charge, and you know, Rootfire, Ineffable, and, you know, a lot of other our community people. We really respect what you guys are doing as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The feeling is certainly mutual, to say the least. So, hey, let's transition into the nether stages of the interview here. This is, I could go on all night long, but eventually everybody's going to have to take a restroom break, and we don't want to do that. But, you know, I want to go all the way back with one question about like your first musical experiences. So like, Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Okay.
Like, first album you ever purchased?
I don't remember the first album I purchased because I'm a little brother, and I've fortunately got
Still your older brothers.
No, I didn't. But and we were in a musical family, so there was always music around me. You know, whether, you know, and our uncle was in the music business, so I don't remember that first cassette tape I bought or vinyl I bought. There's one memory I do have of, I think I was 16 years old and just got my driver's license, and I walked into Tower Records, and the first CD player I had was in my car. And I remember going into the store, and I want to say it was probably around 91, and I had picked up Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Nirvana's Nevermind, NWA's, I want to say 100 Miles and Running, and Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique, which came out years before, but was one of my favorite records of back then. And, you know, that was the most memorable day. Like, CDs came in these like big cardboard boxes for this little CD. I remember walking out of Tower Records. I just got my driver's license, and I was just so stoked to have these 4 albums to like pop in when I was cruising around. You know, so that was the most memorable. I don't remember my first. I do remember buying cassette tapes at Warehouse Records in the mall where our dad's retail business was, but I don't remember a specific one.
All right, fair enough. So, Matt, was when you said you remember going to the record store, was that in the Bay Area? Would that have been?
Yeah, that was Tower Records in Campbell, California.
Tower, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. What about you, John? Do you have a first memory of actually going on your own and buying an album?
I mean, I'll say this: the biggest influence for me, it might not have been buying a record, but as kids, Matt and I both were taken by our family to Jamaica in 1975. Our dad had a boombox, one of the first detachable speaker boomboxes, and he had Marley cassette tapes, Confrontation, Naughty Dread. Those are the 2 I remember, and that music just resonated from an early age. And then was a classic rock kid. We drove cross country in 76 or 77 and moved to California. And it was Willie Nelson, the Eagles. You know, that was a big part of the ride. Our first concert that we went to was David Crosby and Graham Nash, Crosby, Stills, and Nash at the Foster Theater. That, I think, was 76. Matt actually took a shit in his pants during
we got to announce the band on stage.
Yeah, Randy was promoting the show. So there's like pictures of me and Matt like in his arms. He's got the mic announcing the band. And then during Teach Your Children, that was what I remember. My parents, oh, your brother took a crap in his pants. Teach Your Children.
Only person in the interview to have ever shit on stage then, huh?
Well, that's great. I'll take it. As long as I'm the first.
And then, like, I got to discover my dad's record collection pretty early, and I remember pulling out the gatefold to the Allman Brothers Eat a Peach album. And you open that album, pull out the artwork, and it's this crazy, like, ride where the peach truck goes through all these mushroom fields and stuff. And that was one that I definitely remember. And then purchasing – I don't remember the first album necessarily. Like as kids in the 70s, we definitely got Disco 45s. I remember listening to Donna Summer, The Knack, Cheech and Chong's basketball one.
Yeah, our parents were hippies, if you can.
Cheech, they did a basketball movie.
Basketball Jones, Cheech and Chong. And then I got into 80s music, got my first girlfriend in high school and whatever, and I went the mod way for a little bit. So I was like listening to a lot of like Yaz, Upstairs at Eric's, In Excess, The Cure, those bands, The Smiths or New Order. And then,
John did wear lipstick and eyeliner back in those days too.
Yeah, there's some blackmail.
All right, we'll keep those in the back pocket when we need them, huh?
Yeah, Matt's got.
Well, he's going to talk about me shitting on the stage.
Well, fair enough. Touche.
Yeah.
And then
it was cool, but it's cool again now. But it was really cool, like in the '80s, I was like, you were cool if you're, like that was the whole style of the '80s music.
Yeah.
We heavily embarrassed if those hit Facebook today.
They had. I think that now that's just a group text. John, you remember while we're on this subject, cut you off. One of mine and John's big early musical arguments was I was a huge Beastie Boys fan. They were my favorite band.
Same.
And the Grateful Dead was John's favorite band. And I don't know if we were battling for the stereo or just arguing because we're brothers and we like to argue, but we got an argument of who was better between the Grateful Dead and the Beastie Boys, which now as adults, it's like there's no such thing as better when it comes to music. Like, it's subjective, and I love both bands. But
yeah, I was
12, he was 16.
Majorly into Grateful Dead only, and I started with Skeletons from the Closet and like found my way to the actual like earlier albums, but the Beastie Boys were for me like very much the same, and I was also like very much getting into the Beatles at the time, and I remember that I would always compare the Beastie Boys and the Beatles, and I had it would scoff at me, but I would be like, have you fucking listened to Paul's Boutique? Like they did all that stuff, and and what's better, like there's no such thing. There's so much out there.
It's a subjective argument,
Yeah. So there's a question from Travis Chambers, and I don't actually fully understand the context of it, but I think you guys will. How did Dubcat come to be?
Oh man, I saw another question on there that will tie into that, which was how did Bonga Day come about, which was a little mini festival we did over here in LA in what year was that, Matt? 2005, August. But Dubcat was the offspring of a breakup of the Long Beach Dub All-Stars in 2001, and a group of the guys from that band, Marshall Goodman, Jack Manis, Tim Wu,
Opie,
and not Ras Butter Eric. And then Hepcat, which was Dave Fuentes, rest in peace, was a music bass player and just a great guy. And Aaron and Ike Owens, who also both away. I mean, you're talking about a super group that you didn't even really know, but there was a lot of talented guys that came up with Hepcat and Long Beach Dub. And so hence Dubcat. It was part Long Beach Dub All-Stars and part Hepcat. And Half Pint was a part of that for a bit. He entered the scene on Bongadai, the festival at John Anson Ford Theater in 2005, which someone asked about the DVD. And that was the first festival Silverback threw, and it was a financial disaster. And it happened to be on the hottest day ever in LA history, August 25th, also the anniversary of when Katrina hit New Orleans. And the same day that the Hollywood Bowl had their big reggae show across the street. So talk about like some guinea pig lessons, you know. But no one really showed up until later in the night when Stoopid and Barrington played. But Dubcat played a great set that day with a lot of Half Pint classics and LB Dub classics. And that band came together just with the desire to play some cool music from Long Beach Dub and Hepcat. And remember when Eric Wilson was kind of coming disenchanted with Long Beach Dub, he told us, don't worry about me, man. He was just hire the guy from Hepcat to play bass. And I was like, you sure? And I ended up going, he's like, yeah. So LB Dub had a rehearsal down in Long Beach, and Eric apparently was leaving the band. So he was like, just get Dave. So I called Dave. I said, hey, Dave, these guys want to play. And Eric told me, call you. He wants to just give you the role. You know what I mean? So it was a parking lot in Long Beach at the studio. I went down there, and Dave showed up, and Eric also showed up. He was like, oh, this is weird. Like, but it was totally cool. Eric loved Dave, and he was like, you know, kind of anointed him the opportunity to do that. And I don't think Dave ever ended up playing any shows with Long Beach Dub, but, you know, that's kind of where we became acquainted and how Dubcat ended up, you know, becoming an idea and then manifesting into a group that played some pretty killer shows, including Bongadai 2005.
Wow. The history is thick, guys. So I want to get a little bit reflective as well, and just kind of like ask both of you, maybe we'll start with Matt, you know, thinking back over your careers, if there was one piece of advice you could give yourself, your 10 years ago, a piece of advice you could give yourself, what would it be?
Oh, man. It's a tough one. I think every day as human beings, we learn and evolve. So 10 years later, I guess there's a lot of life lessons that I've personally learned. And I think just if you're striving to be a good human being, you're going to learn from everything you do. So I don't know if there's any one thing. I think the biggest thing I could take away from that era is, you know, everything. Like, I think at a certain point, maybe 10 years ago, I thought it was just easy. Like, it was really hard in the beginning, and then it just kind of went through a stage where everything that we worked with was having success. And I think 10 years later, and I kind of took that for granted. I think at that time it was just like, cool, you know, like, you know, we're, you know, we either something's happening where everything we're doing was having success. And I think my biggest takeaway is just don't ever take anything for granted, because you just never know when, you know, that's going to be harder to come by, or, you know, that just things aren't, you know, just back to society. Like, the pandemic took away a large part of what we do. And you just can't ever just think things are just going to always happen correctly. And so just don't ever take success on whatever level it is for granted, is maybe my biggest lesson.
That's a big one. John, what about you?
Well, echoing Matt's sentiment 100%. And, you know, it's just not a cliche. Like, don't take anything for granted, because You just never know what's going to happen. But yeah, living every day to its fullest and trying to be present actually in the moments that you create and are a part of, because you never know when the person you're standing next to might not be there the next day. And um, it's like also we're always so caught up in our world and on the phone and just hustling and but to be present and take it in and breathe and kind of realize that it's you have a gift to be here when we're here living this life and live it to its fullest. I just turned 50 and the time just goes by so quick. It's like a blink of an eye, really. I mean, this last 10 years from 40 to 50 for me, just like, holy shit, where did that go? And that really for me is just trying to embrace the moment. And like I said, I'm grateful for what I have, but just being present there and living every day to its fullest.
Yes, super sage advice. Like don't take successes or anything for granted, and try and embrace the moment and be there. These are deep concepts that sometimes take an entire lifetime to really recognize. So
I think John touched on something like just appreciate the people around you, because in the musician world we've lost some great ones, even the last 5 years, and it's just you never think about things that way, but like one day the person next to you might not be there, you might not be there, so you kind of just gotta appreciate everyone, and
yeah. Well, I want to wrap it up here with a couple of really light questions before the final one. This is all going to be fun moving forward, but I want to ask just a couple of rapid fire questions that I didn't prepare you for, but these will be easy. I promise. So, all right, John, I'm going to start with you. The first one is whiskey or tequila?
Tequila right now.
Tequila right now. Okay, Matt?
Tequila always.
Tequila always. Okay. What is the very last thing you listened to before this conversation, John?
I had the new Tom Petty Wildflowers 3 LP vinyl on the turntable, listening to this 3 masterpiece for Tom Petty, and the remastering is second to none.
Amazing. Okay.
And wait, just for this audience, before that was the Longest Barrel Ride vinyl test pressings. Hint, hint.
That might play well into the very last question. Okay, Matt, last thing you listened to right before this?
Ironically, I did listen to Tom Petty Wildflowers, which is a red light release. And then right before this, we started working with Stephen Marley right before the pandemic, and he just sent us a CD a Dropbox, whatever of his son Joe Mercer's record, and it kind of blew my mind. And then I just rolled right into this.
All right. So John, I'm going to go back to you. Similar question, but like a little bit more broad. What are 3 artists that are in heavy rotation right now?
Well, I've been listening to a lot of vinyl since we're spending more time at home. So there's an old blues artist that I don't know if you guys ever heard of. His name, not John Lee Hooker, but Earl Hooker. I've been listening to a record of his that's just insane, like blues, like to the core blues music. I was listening to some Budos band the other night that our boy Tom from Main Street Jukebox, repping his shirt today. He's been sending me some records, and Budos band was the last one out of that batch that I pulled out. And then I listen to a lot of music that's kind of in our scene too. So I've been checking out the new Vonalia stuff, the new Roots of Creation stuff. I don't know, that's kind of maybe in the last 6 hours, but what I would to
heavy rotation in the last 6 hours. We can narrow the focus a little bit.
Like that.
Nice. Okay, Matt.
Right now has been Wildflowers by Tom Petty, which has You Don't Know How It Feels, which Slightly Stoopid covers so well. And he just again, talking about artists that we've lost. I mean, Tom Petty, what an American treasure, and he just that's a record to me. That's kind of like probably his swan song.
Definitely. Seeing Tom Petty at Lock-In not long after I moved out to Virginia, like on a last minute, like jump in the car, I've got a pass for you, and it was the one and only time I got to see him, and it was just a couple years before he passed away. So that one of my favorites for sure too.
Yeah, Fishbone shared the stage with them, the main stage at the San Diego Festival. Not Wonderfront. Maddie, help me out.
Kaboo.
Oh, Kaboo, yeah. And Fishbone was like the early act in the afternoon, or one of them, and James Addiction played. And then I remember standing up on stage, on the main stage at Kaboo. I was standing next to Perry Farrell, and Tom Petty was playing his set. And man, like, it was just like, I have seen a lot of Petty shows over in my life, so it was like, and again, just to be there, and it was so fucking great. And then he ended up playing the Hollywood Bowl the next night, and the next night was literally I lived down the street from, and I was just tired from the Kaboo weekend and had seen Petty, so I'm like, I sat out the Hollywood Bowl shows, and the next day after that, Petty was gone. So, like, that's also one of those things too, like, sometimes never miss a Sunday show, they say, but
yeah,
when Tom Petty's right down the street, don't not go to the show. But luckily, I did catch that one, and it was a really special performance, and to be up on stage for one of Petty's last 3 shows was pretty memorable.
Yeah, I bet. Matt, what's been in heavy rotation for you?
Oh man, heavy rotation for me. So I'm working from home right now because our office is closed. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. I have 2-year-old and 4-year-old daughter. So it's been a lot of Trolls, Moana, but
Baby Shark.
I've been trying to educate them. My 2-year-old's not old enough to understand yet, but it's my 4-year-old. I tell her for every album she makes me listen to, she's got to listen to something I like. So since the Tom Petty Wildflowers have come out, that's been in heavy rotation. My favorite piece of music to listen to right now, outside of what we work with, is Krungbin it's on SoundCloud, a mixtape of some like Jamaican and funk and just soul music. I don't know the name of it, but it's like kind of my go-to right now. And then Fortunate Youth just sent us some new tracks, which are amazing, which I can't stop playing. And I just got the recording from Kyle, went and played a farm up in New Jersey last weekend. And he just played with him and Rymo and OG. It was a friend of a friend type of thing. And he went out and played a live show, and I just got the recordings from that and have been listening to that, which has been amazing too. So but outside of what we work with, probably Trolls 2 soundtrack and Krungbin's mixtape. Yep.
So does your 4-year-old, does she request anything specifically over and over of your music, not of Trolls?
What's crazy with her is, like, I won't ever force things, to her, but I do play things. And there's just certain things she'll start bopping her head and moving around to, and like, it's like great to see. Like, one that stood out to me was like, and it's a song I never thought like a younger kid like that would gravitate to, but Slightly Stoopid's "Life Rolls On" song.
Mm-hmm.
He just kept playing, play that again. Like it was kind of cool. But she loves reggae music. Like, it's kind of embedded in her, so we get a heavy dose of reggae.
Well, I can say I've been trying to teach Matt's daughter.
Yeah, John tries to teach him music.
I got him doing the Stones. I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Her name's Scarlett, so I've been teaching her Scarlet Begonias by the Dead, and they love the Beach Boys too.
The Beach Boys is a big one. Like that, my kids love the Beach Boys.
These are hip
I ironically went to the Beach Boys drive-in last Friday, and it was kind of cool, full circle. What John was saying earlier of how Sublime kind of was like Beastie Boys meets Beach Boys meets I forget what else he said, but the Beach Boys actually, Mark McGrath was one of their special guests, and they played What I Got.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Full circle shit
Right there. What I Got. They didn't even have to change the beat.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
wow.
Cool. He didn't tell me that.
Wow.
That was with Brian Wilson and Alhart Jarvis.
It was amazing. Like, you know, it's with Brian Wilson. All their kids play with them now. It's like almost, it was really like cool to see like Mike Love's kid, who's like a great guitar player and singer, who actually plays. My wife told me that he used to play the bar that she worked at.
Mike Love's kid
in Santa Barbara, you know, so like it was cool seeing all them and their kids on stage, and you know, it's just kind of you know, hopefully what I see is a glimpse into the future for us, maybe 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well,
one other thing I want to say is in heavy rotation today. I've just been working on it, but is Dumps of Funk just dropped Justice 2020 today, and that's a collab with Charlie Tuna and Trombone Shorty. And just wanted to say to everyone, check out the video. The song's an anthem, and the main gist behind it is to make sure that you go out and vote. You know, so
yep.
Whatever your political preference is, don't throw your vote in the dumpster. Check out the video. Charlie Tuna just rips up this Justice rap, and the band's maybe not quite as political as the video, but it's a cool little watch. So that just dropped today.
Awesome. Charlie Tuna, I mean, talk about I get a feeling in my bones when I hear his voice. Damn.
Verbal Herman Munster.
Spitting on this song. Listen to the spitting on this song. Check it out. It's really good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, so John, you were just touching on the last thing I wanted to ask, which is, you know, is there anything you guys want to promote? But before we do that, I just want to take a minute and thank both of you guys for taking the time. You know, I've told you before, and I'll tell anybody who ever asks, like, I really look up to you guys as managers and leaders in the scene that I have a career in now. So it's a treat for me to be able to have this conversation. And, you know, we've had like 150 people watching us and asking questions. Sorry to everybody whose questions we didn't get to. But seriously, thank you guys so much for taking the time and for being here. And on that note, Matt, is there anything that you want to promote?
Thank you, T. Reed, and the Respect's Mutual, man. Just seeing you kind of do your thing and coming up has been like great for us to see. And we, you know, like, we respect you mutually, and thanks for having us on.
Such a pleasure.
But yeah, I mean, as far as things to plug, I mean, there's nothing really to plug, but there's a few things that we didn't touch on that I'm really excited about, which, you know, Closer to the Sun, our partnership with Slightly Stoopid and Cloud9 out of Mexico is like by far the most amazing music event I've ever been a part of. And one of my, you know, biggest kind of like, one of the things I take the most pride in, because it's honestly like, if you haven't been, probably the best music experience you'll ever have. Just
hands
being
down.
On, yeah, Rita's the coaster, just being on in paradise with all your friends in this music scene, and the bands are there just hanging out at the bar and hanging out in the clubs and hanging out, watching some intimate shows. We didn't really even get into that, but I don't want to plug it. I just don't want to forget it. You know, our recent partnership with Stephen Marley and everything he's got happening. Like, the guy's one of the most amazing producers in the world. He's producing like all the third generation Marleys out of his studio. And not only that, he's like one of the greatest artist people, someone who, back to How Things Happen, we've known for 15, 16 years and just started working with him. So really excited about that. And, you know, he's got his Kaya Fest, which we're really, you know, hoping to take to another level. All the great, I mean, there's just so much to even plug. I mean, Slightly Stoopid, I'm always just so excited to keep growing with Kyle, Miles, Rymo, OG, De La, Paulie, all the boys, AG, you know, and, you know, Fortunate Youth, who we recently signed, working on a new record. So I don't think there's just one thing, like all Dumpster Funk.
Yeah, their new album's gonna
Like Ethan Tucker, Law, Roots of Creation, you know, on the label side, like, you know, amazing experience putting out the last Hyrie record and working with Trish on that, you know.
Reese
the Reese brothers and David Carnes, like,
David Carnes, big ups.
Yeah, one of like the great young bands coming up who's not necessarily reggae, but, you know, definitely check them, real deal musicians. But I don't know, it's there's nothing like I really want to plug. I hope to see all the fans and everybody next summer on Stupid Summer Traditions Tour, or Stephen Marley's Babylon by Bus, or whatever else, you know, is out there. You know, excited to see everybody at the music festivals, but there's not one thing I can say that we're looking forward to plugging, but just excited to be working with all these great people, musicians, and great music and events.
Yeah, Ethan Tucker's got some nice stuff up his sleeve too. I was just watching The Voice on the new season, and then thinking like he went up there in 2016 and like slayed and became a finalist. And I mean, he's just grown so much since then, and he's gonna surprise some people with some new stuff. And you know, there's a lot of other things on the horizon as well.
So we have to keep our eyes and our ears open and just keep enjoying it, right?
Yeah, keep on rocking in the free world.
Keep on rocking in the free world. Well, that is a fine note to end on. You guys, we'll wrap it up here, but seriously, thank you again for the time. We could obviously, we should do 5 or 6 more of these. We could do one just talking about the festivals, just talking. So I hope we can do it again sometime.
Let's do it, guys. We appreciate it, Reed. And, you know, big up to you and Rootfire. You guys are doing great things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Peace out. We'll see ya.